chat a bit of League of Ireland, and of course we have the football show, and on the football show we're going to talk Manchester United versus Liverpool, along with a few other matters with the great Gary Breen. And I should tell you that just before we came on air, I got Richie McCormack beside me to do his very best impression of Stephen Kenny saying Bate Borisov.
Bate Borisov there, Johnny.
How are you, Richie?
Good, thanks.
Yeah. You're all the better to hear that Ali Regba is signed for Bows until the summer.
Yeah, it's good news.
It is
just
good
to have
news.
extra bodies on board and some support for Ginny Corcoran up front is all the more welcome.
Shane Keegan, who knows both players very well from your League of Ireland days.
Yeah.
Your debut on the Off the Ball midweek show.
That's it, yeah. First evening shift, no better company. Regba.
Questionable.
Super sign for Bows. It would have been a real killer for them, wouldn't it, to see such a brief glimpse of him towards the end of last season and then lose him kind of straight away. So they'll be absolutely happy out to get a proper run with him in the side.
Shows how well thought of he is that he's already got a gig pretty much sorted out over in the UK and with no less a club than Leicester City. I mean, he's obviously impressed for them over the past couple of weeks.
Most definitely. I suppose the thing you'd be questioning is how have Bows pulled this off? Sure, I would have thought it was quite a cue to get Regba, given how good his form was.
Pure Bibbsborough charm, Shane. Pure. Well, at this stage they know, like, Leicester are probably going to field him in the under-23s at most over there. That season's probably drawn to a close. They figure that he's going to get more regular and a higher standard of football perhaps over the course of the next few months, which will segue him into nicely pre-season for Leicester across channel, and then who knows what next year.
I've tried to make this argument a good few times with Premier League clubs, where when you're in charge of a club and you're phoning across and you're saying to them, look, do you want them to play fake football in the 23s for the next 6 months, or do you want to loan them out over here? You know, you'd be after fellas. When I was at Galway, I would have been after the likes of Aaron Connolly. See, could we get him back over on a short-term stint? Before Ryan Manning broke into the QPR side, I was strongly pushing to try and get him back because he hadn't. I think it would stand to them massively to that kind of thing that's going on with Regba at the moment. I think it would serve a far greater purpose than I mean, I've watched some of those 23s games on TV, and it's complete fake football.
Well, the sheer volume of loan signings that have been made by League of Ireland sides from England and Scotland over the past, even Joe McKee most recently in the last hour signing for Dundalk on loan from Falkirk, it shows that, you know, they're better off getting regular football, regular cut and thrust football, than they would be maybe sitting in the reserves, sitting in the under 23s or playing under 18s or beyond, you know.
Absolutely. Imagine if a Dublin side at the moment managed to persuade Spurs that the best thing for Parrott's development would be to get 6 months back here. Like, that would be a fantastic signing for a League of Ireland side. Seriously, put bums on seats, all that kind of thing.
It really would. In fairness, though, the players that do come here, even on their loan stints from England, they invariably say, yeah, standard was good, actually. It was well worth it. Yeah. And I'm not trying to big it up here, because I don't think they would have said that 15, 20 years ago. And
conversely, you do see players who come back perhaps and think that they're going to have a handy number, and the tales you hear from training grounds etc. is such and such is unfit, such and such has come back carrying a stone and a bit more than they possibly should have done, and they just think that they're going to come back here and stroll it, and it's never the case.
Richie, I saw Chris Forrester playing for Pats on Friday night. He looked, I'd say it's a stretch to say he looked 50% fit.
Yeah,
he looked so off the pace.
His involvement with Aberdeen, to be fair to him, had been scanned. We don't know the reasons why he's obviously wanted to come back here and play his football back in Dublin again, but it's a case of, if you don't play regularly, if you're not up to that, you know, pitch of playing regular football, regular first team football, then you are going to be lagging a bit behind when you come back here.
I got to apologise to the listeners if they think this is going to be League of Ireland for the next 3 hours. It actually is.
Can it be?
No, it won't be. We have plenty of other things to discuss, but in fairness, Shane, we did obviously we're going to have a special League of Ireland supplement to the show on Saturday as well, and Shane will be on then. We've plenty to talk about, but the first week was last Friday night, and it's very exciting that you've the likes of Patrick McElhinney, obviously, who got injured, but Chris Forster and Jack Byrne all playing for some of the top sides.
Look, you're looking at, there's a couple of names around the league at the moment who, you know, not a million years ago you were kind of saying could push on and become Irish international regulars, and for one reason or another they've, you know, regressed a little bit, or maybe just they mightn't have regressed talent-wise. It might just suit them to be back here, and we're getting some really, really talented footballers back. Obviously, kind of started with Conor Clifford coming back a couple of seasons ago, and as you were saying, in terms of players coming back, he probably didn't set the world alight in the manner that we would have hoped when he came back. But by all accounts, he's certainly acclimatised now, and I think this could be a huge season for him. You throw him in along with your Jack Burns, Chris Forresters. I mean, these were fellas who are, you know, destined for amazing things at 18, 19, and if their head is screwed on, could have be fantastic players for the League of Ireland this year.
Just getting back to Regba, I've seen him play once, and that was against Pats last season. It was effectively the game that was the catalyst for the end of the Liam Buckley second term at St Patrick's, because that particular day Bows were obviously playing Cork in the Cup afterwards, because they basically played an under-19 team. And to me, it was like a sign of the future of the League of Ireland, that you've all these young players, homegrown, that could go on to really good things, and you're doing it within a prudent financial budget. But Regba that day, there was something very old school about him. His name is obviously not due to associate. I think he's Algerian German kind of background. Obviously, he'll play for Ireland, I hope, if he ever goes that far.
He's played under-19s, or he's been involved with the under-19s if he hasn't played. But
he was a throwback to another era, because he's big, he's stocky, strong, he's stocky,
powerful.
He puts himself about, he will score headers. How far do you think he could go, Richie, without in the limited evidence we have?
My worry is that in going to Leicester, you just end up as part of that glut that populates an under-23 side and does so for a while, and then spirals quietly out to other clubs, possibly on loan to like a Championship club or a League One club in an effort to get game time. I mean, you only have to look at the path that several players have had from Preston on downwards to see the struggles of Andy Boyle have had. Graham Burke to leave Preston so early on loan to Gillingham just because he wasn't getting first team football. You just hope that they're fostered in the right way and have the right attitude in themselves as well once they go over to actually not think that, you know what, I played first team football over Northern, I'm going to be okay, I'm going to push on here. There's an awful lot of work still to do when they get over there.
There's been two great pieces this week. Yourself and Johnny's piece with Sean Kavanagh on the podcast.
Daniel rather.
With Dan.
You're interchangeable in fairness.
In relation to the LOI Weekly podcast that Daniel McDonnell and I did, in which Sean Kavanagh effectively said he was probably borderline suffering from depression and locked himself out of talking to people really when he was at Fulham, because he may have been at Fulham or subsequently that, but he was in a bad way.
Absolutely, yeah. It was another piece with Evan Pearce, who was at West Brom, I think was on 42 possibly. Again, very, very similar story. You'd really, really hope that the likes of a Regba is, better equipped to take on that kind of environment that he's inevitably going to face.
I'm worried about you, Shane.
You're worried about me?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
You were a football manager who went from Wexford to Galway United. We spoke about league race. Galway United sold league race. Galway United were unfortunate to get relegated. Shane Keegan leaves his Galway United job the following season, which was the middle of last season. You're getting an awful lot of media work now, so you're kind of slightly edging away from management into the media side of things, the dark arts.
I wouldn't say that. You have to do something to keep yourself entertained while you're on the sidelines waiting for something to come up again. It's fair
to say, Richie, his Sunday his Times column, or the Times Ireland edition column, has been very well received.
Always well worth a read as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, boys. Any plug is welcome.
Have you enjoyed it though? And your actual day job is 100% media. You're wrapped up in the challenging media of regional newspapers at the moment.
Yeah, considering it's not exactly an industry that's going from strength to strength, to have both my full-time job and my probably more enjoyable evening commitments all into one industry is not ideal. But yeah, look, it's I've definitely enjoyed doing it. Yeah, I've really, really enjoyed doing it. So I have. You get a bit of a buzz when things are well received. They're not always well received. I think you probably more than any pundit gets a bit of a backlash here and there from the odd comment here or there, but it's all part of the job, isn't it, Johnny?
You kind of have to, I suppose, you take it in, you take it to heart a bit maybe, but you kind of switch off after a while as well, because you just realise that you're going to die. So you might as well spend your time in this world worrying about enjoying yourself,
Jesus.
Isn't that true,
Richie? It got dark very quickly there, Johnny, didn't it?
Albeit though, I would like to ask you about regional newspapers. How do you have a big job? If you could just tell us about that briefly, and what's the answer to the challenge that regional newspapers face? Because in theory people shouldn't stop buying regional newspapers, because you're still getting your weekly local notes that you wouldn't necessarily get online.
Yeah, there's a very simple answer to it, Johnny, and that's that you have to become more than a regional newspaper. Anybody who thinks that any local newspaper thinks they're going to survive as a local newspaper is absolutely kidding themselves. We literally would have been going through all this today, to be honest with you, where you'd be talking about how the website needs to become more and more part of what you're doing. I think it was the New York Times reported there in the last couple of weeks that in 2018 was the first ever year where their digital advertising outgrew their in-paper advertising. Look, we're a long way off that in this country yet, but we're moving towards it. We are definitely moving towards it, and there'll be a big push in our place to drive advertisers in that direction.
You're working for
our editorial content. Iconic newspapers that have a lot of the local regional newspapers around the country, the Leinster Express and Laois, Kilkenny People and Kilkenny, Leinster Leader in Kildare. 9 or 10 counties around the country. So it's it's a challenging environment, but it's good.
You know, I was on a 7-hour flight recently, and it affords you the time to read.
You're away more than any human being I think I've ever met.
I've been away in a while.
Great life, hasn't it?
In a while, it's like for a fortnight for you.
I bought that day's paper, and I read it more or less from top to bottom, and it was so refreshing. It was like, it'll be sad when this is, and it probably inevitably will be gone, because you never read a paper top to bottom online. You know, and you were educating yourself, and just having that tangible paper in front of you, for me, has never been replicated by reading something digital.
They bring you around on my sales pitches.
Yeah, I'm willing to help.
You can't get a holiday booked in 2 weeks.
What's going on in the world of sports news?
Plenty,
Richie
Johnny
McCormack.
Ward. Plenty, Johnny Ward.
If you were to read this now, no,
I'm not going to do it.
If you were, who would be your favourite impression, or your most? Richie is very, very good at impressions.
That's not true at all.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Could you do an entire show in a Stephen Kenny voice?
No. I remember working at HMV. When I was bored, I used to serve customers in a completely different accent, randomly, just for the crack.
Every customer?
One afternoon, yeah, I did, yeah. It was like vacillating between like Scottish accents, Scouse accents, and an English one, I think, at one point. Once got out of giving a chugger my address and all that, just by saying that I was English and from someplace in Surrey.
Customer experience is a weird thing. I had one of the shocks of my life this week, when the Lidl cashier started making a conversation with me. I was like, this is not how your job works.
No,
you're supposed to break the world record for how fast I can be served here.
How can you possibly talk and bag your groceries at a record level at the same time?
Unbelievably, there were 6 or 7 people in the queue, after me, and basically I bought like some sourdough bread or something that had olive in it, and she was trying to figure out whether it was this type of bread or that type of bread, because it must have been a different price. And then before I even had paid the money, she started explaining to me about all their bread structure while the queue in behind was getting longer, and I was like, you could get sacked for this. This was not working, Lidl. And she was very, very, happy to have the chats.
Surely getting serious daggers though from the crew behind you.
I just couldn't look, because I was like, I
feel eyes burning in the back of your head.
What is it actually happening in the world of sport, though?
Europa League, first and foremost.
Oh, yeah, sorry, one last mention.
God, Jesus.
One last mention about Lidl. The Lidl Twitter, the Lidl Twitter banter with the parrot that got missing in Dublin Airport this week was genuinely one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I don't know if you've seen this. A parrot went missing in Dublin Airport. Dublin Airport put it on Twitter that the parrot was gone missing. Some lad put up a sign in Lidl in one of the shops saying, "My parrot has gone missing." One of the guys in Lidl saw it, and then he saw the Dublin Airport, and he rang Dublin Airport, and the parrot was returned to its owner. This is no word of a lie. Not Troy parrot, an actual parrot.
Thanks for clarifying, Johnny.
But it was one of the best social media. I hate social media in many ways. I love it in many ways. But this was a brilliant interaction, and the parrot is happily rehomed.
Have Off the Ball got some sort of commercial sponsorship with Lidl at the moment?
If
is
they
that
don't,
the reason behind the story? Is
after
there
all that,
surely will now.
And all the other shops are great as well.
Yeah. There was a rare Mesut Ozil start at the Emirates in Arsenal's last 32 Europa League tie with Bate Borisov, that Arsenal currently lead by 3-0, 3-1 on aggregate. Zakhar Volkov turned a Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang cross into his own net inside 4 minutes to give Arsenal parity at the tie. Skradjan Mustafi headed Arsenal 2-0 ahead in the night and 2-1 up in the tie 6 minutes before half-time. Most recently, Sead Kolasinac has headed Arsenal third from a corner that Bate keeper Denis Sherbritsky flapped at. So Arsenal heading through to the last 16. It looks as if, though, that Celtic are not. They are still scoreless away to Valencia tonight. So Valencia is still leading that tie by 2-0 on aggregate. And Chelsea still have a lot to do in their 8 o'clock kickoff at Stamford Bridge, where they hold a 2-1 aggregate lead over Malmo. There's no Gianfranco Zola on the Chelsea bench tonight, as he's been forced to return to hospital after complications from a gallstone operation. The Italian had surgery last week. Chelsea line out with Willy Caballero in goal, a back four of Cesar Azpilicueta, Antonio Rudiger, Andreas Christensen and Emerson. N'Golo Kante, Ross Barkley and Mateo Kovacic make up their midfield, and then there's the front three of Willian, Olivier Giroud and Callum Hudson-Odoi.
Wherever your career is going, Shane, do you feel sympathy for Brendan Rodgers? In the sense that he seems to be in a slight no man's land at the moment. In the certain Celtic probably going out tonight, may probably win the league. Does anyone care? How does he get a job back in England or somewhere else?
I think he does get a job back in England, though. I'd be pretty sure that he will.
Premier League?
Yeah, I think he will get a Premier League job. I think if a side are in the bottom half and in a kind of a relegation zone and they get rid of somebody, I think Brendan Rodgers is the kind of name that would be kind of one that would spring to mind fairly quickly for them. Whether his contractual obligations at Celtic would allow him to do it, I'm not sure how long he's got left on his contract. You've got all this stuff going on in the background. It's not just as easy as obviously being able, I want to go back to the Premier League, I'm going to go back. But no, I wouldn't think his I wouldn't have thought his reputation was damaged by his time at Celtic. Really, I would have thought
a lot of sympathy for him as well.
I would have thought, if anything, it was slightly enhanced. Yeah.
I remember you were telling me when you got your badges that you did your badge with Eddie Howe, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah.
That was in Northern Ireland, was it?
That's right.
And I remember you just telling me how this lad, you knew there was something special.
Yeah, I think the way I was trying to put it here was that it was interesting. There was two managers currently working in the league on that A licence at the time, and it was Eddie Howe, who was with Bournemouth, but at the time Bournemouth were League 1, League 2, somewhere like that anyway, possibly League 2 I think, and the other one was MK Dons, Carl Robinson at MK Dons.
Carl would be a bit of a geezer,
and they were both really, really impressive guys.
Scouse, John.
Well, he's a bit not so much a geezer, but a bit of a
surrounded by impersonations here tonight.
Is he a Scouse?
Yeah, he is.
But there's a bit of a kind of a charisma.
He's actually married to one of the girls off Brookside. Remember Brookside?
I do, yeah.
He was married to one of the girls at Brookside when we were doing the course. Yeah, I remember chatting with him over a couple of pints.
No, it's not.
It was going back then, but that's quite a few years ago.
There we are.
Then, so it was. But yeah, they were both very, very impressive people in very, very, very different ways. In that Carl was, as you've described, I am in the room, everybody look at me, I am a presence, here I am. He was loud and, you know.
Is that how he scored the one in Brookside, you reckon?
Probably, yeah. You'd imagine he'd be fairly good in the chat-up lines in a nightclub, all right. So
he'd be more understated. He'd be like, I'm Eddie Howe, would you like me to buy you a drink?
You know what? There's actually very little point in me describing their management styles. Really what it is Carl Robinson chats you up in a nightclub amongst the blaring music. Eddie Howe would rather take you out for a quiet date and sit you down and have a proper chat with you.
And he'd pay the bill.
And he'd pay the bill.
Splitting the bill.
And he'd pay the bill. But yeah, they were both impressive fellas, just in very, very different ways. Yeah.
Richie. She was once Miss British Empire as well.
Miss British Empire.
Yeah, Anne-Marie Davies. Yeah.
There you are.
If you're listening tonight, Anne-Marie, you might be able to actually reveal how you chatted him up or how he chatted you up in the first place.
Rory McIlroy's had a decent start to the WGC Mexico Championship. He birdied 2 of his opening 4 holes and has since birdied the 15th as well. So he's moved to 3 under par as McIlroy. He is just 1 shot off the nascent lead of Billy Horschel. Shane Lowry's opening round is just underway as well. He hasn't had such a bright start. He's bogeyed the first, is 1 over par. Tiger Woods will go out later on. But speaking of McIlroy, he says skipping this year's Irish Open at Lahinch is an effort to stay fresh for the Open Championship at Portrush. The 29-year-old will play at the Scottish Open a week before the Open, but claims 3 tournaments in a row, which it would have been if he was playing the Irish Open, would be overkill. On to the Six Nations this weekend, and Wales have selected Gareth Anscombe ahead of Dan Biggar at fly half for their game with England in Cardiff on Saturday. Warren Gatland has also recalled Gareth Davies, while Corey Hill takes over from Adam Beard at lock. England head coach Eddie Jones has made 2 changes to his side for Saturday, with prop Ben Moon and wing Jack Noel both starting in place of the injured pair of Mako Vunipola and Chris Ashton. As can be expected from both of the head coaches, there has been some verbal sparring today.
As you've read in the media, it's all about Wales. We're playing potentially the greatest team ever. Their players are full of emotion. It's the biggest game they're ever going to play in their lives. But we've just been focusing on ourselves, focusing on getting our preparation right.
The only quotes I can see about this being the greatest Welsh team ever has come from Eddie Jones. It hasn't come from anyone else. So I wouldn't be disrespectful enough to say that this was the greatest Welsh team ever. It's a long way off being the greatest Welsh team ever. So he's the one talking us up.
If you're talking about 2 coaches, I'd love the 2 of them having a pint and just seeing how it would work out, but if it didn't end up in fisticuffs. But I wonder what Eddie Jones is actually like as a guy.
I think he's done a great job of possibly masking the real Eddie Jones over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, in that there is a sense of what Eddie Jones the coach is like and what Eddie Jones the manipulator in terms of the press is like, especially over the course of his term in charge of England. But I think underneath it all, he might be a very different bloke.
Maybe he is.
Yeah.
From my very limited understanding of rugby, but will you take any interest in that game, Shane?
Very little, if I'm completely honest. Some of the personalities in rugby would interest me more so than the game. Like, I would struggle to tell you too many games that I've watched from start to finish yet. I would have read the Paul O'Connell book. I've read Clive Woodward's book. Winning was one of the best sport management books I've ever read. So some of the personalities would interest me more, but I would struggle to sit down and watch a game in full and show.
What about the Principality roof?
Yeah, the question of whether or not it will be open remains another topic of conversation. While no decision has been made. It's believed England want it left open on Saturday, with the hosts having to go along with whatever their visitors wish. But Warren Gatland doesn't see the sense in the current rule.
It is a bugbear of mine that, basically in the Six Nations, not the autumn or World Cups, where the roof is decided by us or closed, as a matter of fact, I find it ironic that it's our stadium and we can't decide what we do with it. If it was me, I'd be going to the Six Nations and banging my fist on the table and saying, this is our roof, we should make the decision on it. But that's out of our hands, and we have to abide what the rules that have been made, and then accept what decision comes back in terms of what England's preference is for Saturday.
We're back.
We are back. That is Warren Gatland speaking about the roof. We've had a goal, which possibly distracted me, at Mestalla. Celtic's faint hopes of making the last 16 in the Europa League now surely over. Kevin Gamero has put Valencia 1-0 up on the night and 3-0 up on aggregate. Jack O'Donoghue could make a first appearance since May in Munster's Pro 14 game away to the Ospreys tomorrow night. The back row has been named on the bench for that game at Liberty Stadium. O'Donoghue's been out of action since suffering a serious knee ligament injury in last season's Pro 14 semi-final with Leinster. There's the first start of the season for winger Calvin Nash tomorrow, with Jaco Tata and Dan Goggin forming a new centre partnership, and JJ Hanrahan will start at number 10 with Reece Marshall and Stephen Archer drafted into the front row for Munster. Kieran Marmion will earn his 150th cap for Connacht as he makes a first start since Ireland's November win over the All Blacks. That's in tomorrow's game away to Glasgow. And with Jack Carty in the Ireland camp, Marmion will be partnered in the three quarters by Academy out half Conor Fitzgerald. Fergus McFadden is back from injury to take his place on the Leinster wing for their game with Southern Kings. That's at the RDS. Elsewhere, there's a debut for 21-year-old hooker Ronan Kelleher, who tomorrow night will become the 54th different player capped by Leinster in this season alone. Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp fined £45,000 today by the English FA for the comments he made about the officials after their Premier League game with West Ham. The governing body ruled the German had questioned the integrity of referee Kevin Friend and/or implied bias. Some bad news emanating from last night's game in Gelsenkirchen, where a Manchester City fan has suffered what they're calling a massive traumatic brain injury after a clash in the closing stages of last night's game with Schalke. The public prosecutor's office in Essen and Gelsenkirchen say there is an acute danger to the life of the 32-year-old Englishman. German police have set up a murder commission to investigate the incident, and a member of city staff has stayed in Germany to offer support to the family. Well, 3 men have been arrested and charged over abusive messages sent to a Scottish Premiership referee. John Beaton received death threats after his work mobile phone was leaked online following December's Old Firm game. He was criticised by Celtic fans for not taking action against Rangers striker Alfredo Morelos in that game. The 3 men have been released and are due in court at a later date. This news came barely 18 hours after Steve Clarke spoke out against the sectarian abuse he was subjected to at Ibrox last night. The Kilmarnock boss was speaking after their 5-0 Scottish Cup defeat to Rangers, and that abuse came mere days after his own striker Chris Boyd was hit by a coin by Celtic fans.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's nice being back in the west of Scotland, really nice. When I was approached by Rangers about taking over the job here, I was assured. Now we don't have that in the west of Scotland anymore. It's gone. Yeah, they can call me a no problem, thanks guys, no problem. But they call me a come on. We're living in the dark ages. They're not allowed to call my assistant a black bee. Yeah, but they can call me that's correct? Is that correct? What are we doing in Scotland? I wake up every morning and I thank Chelsea for coming and taking me away from the west of Scotland, because my children don't understand this. They don't have anything to do with this. My children have nothing to do with it. They don't understand. So thankfully, when I go down there, my children, my grandchildren, they don't need to worry about this. So, fantastic to be back in Scotland.
We're gonna be talking about this later on in the football show. Actually, absolutely despicable stuff.
Dark ages stuff, as Steve Clarke was one to point out last night, and right too. The Republic of Ireland women's side have been handed a tough draw for Euro 2021 qualifying. Colin Bell's side drawn in Group I, along with Germany, Ukraine, Greece and Montenegro. Ireland will begin with home games against Montenegro and Ukraine before a November trip to Greece, and the campaign will wind up with a home tie against Germany. Only the top side in each group and the 3 best runners-up will qualify automatically for the finals in England. The other second place sides, of course, going fourth to a playoff. Dundalk have signed Joe McKee on loan from Falkirk, as you mentioned earlier. The 26-year-old midfielder will stay at Oriel Park until July. While another contract news away from home, Republic of Ireland defender Enda Stevens has signed a new deal with Sheffield United. The former Shamrock Rovers full-back has already played 33 times for the Blades this season in their promotion push, and his new deal will keep him at Bramall Lane until at least the summer of 2022. Joining him in penning a new deal at the Championship club is their top scorer Billy Sharp, who will stay with United until the summer of 2021, by which stage he will be 35.
Thank you very much, Richie. We'll get some ads.
Off the Ball on News Talk. The Moncrief Show is on the road again. Next stop, Cork. Movies and Booze will be coming to you live from the Riverlea Hotel in the heart of Cork City on Friday the 22nd of February. With its glamorous new River Club, the Riverlea is Cork's ultimate destination to eat, drink and be social. We'll have amazing music, delicious beer and all the fun and devilment that Movies and Booze has to offer. Audience places are all gone now, but you can listen live and take part in the Movies and Booze hashtag from 2 p.m. Sure, what else would you want on a Friday?
Movies and Booze on Moncrief.
Brought to you by Lidl's award-winning wine range.